Welcome back, everyone, to what I believe is episode 300 of the Pro Sports podcast. Got a great one today with my man Henrik from VO. So Henrik, appreciate you hopping on, and excited to do this one, hear more. This is a fun space, so thanks for spending some time with us here today.
Thanks for having me on.
So for people first time, hearing about your company, at least from you yourself, how are you describing VO? What exactly do you guys do from a high level? Because, I was just on your website before this, and there's a lot of cool things. So I'm always curious, like how the founders simplify it down. So anyway, that'd be helpful to get us kicked off, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. We've built a product that makes it very easy to film, analyze, and share sport games. So we built a small portable camera that you put on a tripod, and that automatically can film your game. And then we built a bunch of products that lets coaches and players interact with the video. So it's easy to clip and share clips. And then with AI, we are able to also break down the games, we're able to surface team stats, sessions, heat maps. We're able to do live streaming. We can do jersey number detection, so you can do individualized highs per player. And what we can spend more time on this also, but what we're going to do is actually surface those information in a very relevant manner to the coaches, so they can easily make sense of all the data that we're generating. So basically, we make it very easy to film and analyze and share your games, and we do that across 50,000 clubs in more than 100 countries. So we're a global company. We cover more than 8 different sports, basically team sports. Last year, we filmed more than 3 million games. So we're probably the biggest producer of youth sport in the world. So we're all about making it easy to film youth sport and analyze it and share it. We're located in Copenhagen. We're about 400 employees here out of Copenhagen in Denmark, but we have a big presence obviously in the US and across Europe, and also present in Asia out of Tokyo.
Love it, man. It's awesome to hear, and it feels like every time we talk, it's there's add another country or add another million games or something. It's impressive. So good job and congrats on that. Curious though, to get there, I'm sure you saw it in your head, and I'm sure there's still, a long way to go in your head from a founder lens. But like when this all started, what was the exact problem you saw, and what did the space really look like at that time? What was the brokenness of it that led you to jump into this and build it out?
Yeah, so we started 10 years ago building the company, and back then, back then was only professional sport being filmed. So I felt it myself. So I've been playing football for many years. I'm a right back and probably not the most technical player, so I very rarely score goals. And then the few goals that I did score, I'd love to be able to see them. And I met my co-founder 11 years ago, and he just came too late to his son's football game and misses his first goal, and was like, how come we can turn on the TV and watch FC Copenhagen, but we can't watch our own goals or our own kids' goals? So that was kind of how it all started. And then obviously looking at the market, it was that primarily in Europe, but also in the US, it was very professional, very elitist sport that had the resources to have a film crew filming it. But 99.9% of all sport went unfilmed. So from the get-go, our mission has been, we want to make technology more accessible in sport. So ultimately, we believe that sport is so important in our societies, both from a participation level. Right, it's so healthy. We need to have more kids playing sport, but we also need to elevate that experience through the audience around the country. Right, I think sport has this unique ability to unite people in a world where everything divides us. There, when you're on the field, right, it doesn't matter what your dad is doing, right? It's about winning the game, no matter where you're from, and that's just the unique thing about sport. Unfortunately, technology was only for the very elitist, the richest clubs or the professionals clubs, but technology was not accessible to the majority, to the recreational teams, the youth teams, and that's what we are solving. So our mission is to make technology more accessible. And we do that first and foremost through video, because we believe that video is kind of the foundation for so many services and products in the space, right? I mean, first and foremost within coaching, because video is just, I mean, a coach, you can start yelling on the sideline, right? But as a young player, when you can see yourself on video, it just makes me so much evident what you're doing right and wrong. So the video is just a fantastic coaching tool. So from a coaching perspective, video is important. Obviously, from that video, we can then extract data, so we can also inform coaching decisions and help the coaches become even better coaches, because the coaches that are watching, well, obviously there are things that a coach cannot see, but data can help surface that. So video is the foundation for just building better coaches, talent development, and we are, from a coaching perspective, we're working with, well, we're both working with all the, like, almost all professional, all Premier League clubs, academies with youth video. So we work with some of the best coaches, and then we try to learn from them and bring that knowledge down to, okay, how can we actually help a youth coach in becoming a better coach. With that makes better coaches and also creates better talent development. So video is important within talent development, but it's also a medium for the players to record the unique moments, the goals, the tackles, the nutmegs, and to share those, right? So suddenly it becomes like a bank of memories, right? You probably remember that one goal you scored or that tackle, right? Those kind of moments are not just memories, but it's actually something tangible that you now have, and you can share that with your parents, with your mates, and then live streaming then obviously then connects the audience that cannot be there in the game. Maybe you have a parent that cannot be there. Maybe you're a travel team and your parents can there, or your grandparent cannot be there. So video is also this medium that connects the audiences around the game, and then you would have other things like scouting, and you have other services as well. So we believe fundamentally that when we solve video, we are actually solving fundamentally a lot of very interesting topics within youth sport.
Yeah, I don't have too many goals from, as you call it, football on camera. And even if there was cameras, I don't think we'd see too many. So I luckily don't have that problem. My feet, I don't have the footwork. I had all the hand work, I guess, which is why I went to basketball. But I do, interestingly, I have to be one of the few Americans that never played American football, but played, soccer growing up. Like, I think it's probably reverse for me. I don't know. A lot of Americans seem to play soccer growing up. But anyway, I always find that funny.
I think I think in the US, right, soccer is becoming the sport with most participants in the US. So from a participant perspective, soccer is just a massive sport in the US. But then from a fan perspective, obviously there are bigger sports. But from our perspective, we are in the youth segment, right? So we are where there is most participants. So here it's obviously soccer is the biggest, but they can be basketball, lacrosse, volleyball, American football for that matter, flag ball. I mean, there's so many awesome sports, right? So we cover it all. But we started with football, soccer. That's like in Europe, Denmark. That's the biggest sport. That's where we started. I play football myself, so that's kind of where I started. But obviously, the need for video is universal and across sports. We just started in football, but we basically want to solve the needs in every sport there is, because every talent needs
Right.
the coaching tools, and every talent want to share those moments with the families around the game.
100%. And like, even for me on the travel side, at least from high school, I had a lot of it recorded and can still go back and look. But so much happened in the travel and the AAU basketball where I'm like, man, I have a slight memory of how that play looked in my head, but it'd be cool to even have those. But I'm curious on this. I have a few other product questions, and there's a bunch of different ways to go. But building in Denmark, right? Advantages, disadvantages. I'm always curious just to get an international perspective. Building in a country. Obviously, we have most of our guests are North American. We've had Australia, Saudi Arabia, India. We've had all over, Israel. But it's like, I'm curious from Denmark, how you see it. What's been pros and cons?
Yeah, I think what you learn from building from out of a small country, right? We are 6 million inhabitants in Denmark, right? It is that in order to build a company of scale, you immediately need to think with international scale, right? So like off the bat, we were an international company because you can't really build a massive company with 6 million people here, right? So yeah, you really learn quickly to scale internationally, think in those terms and in multilingual terms, and then obviously learning the perspective of many countries and cultures. Right, it's just natural in our culture here. And then, like, I think so. So our scaling journey out of Denmark has been formed by, before Veo, I founded some other companies, and some of that we scaled a bit too quickly internationally with on the cost side. So we burned through too much cash by building offices around the world, and ultimately fail on that because we were just not really had our go to market nailed before we started scaling. So at Veo, we took another approach and have built another go-to-market engine that lets us scale internationally, but with a lower footprint per country we're in. So we are operating 100 countries out of Denmark. Obviously, the US is our biggest region. We have a big footprint out of Miami, and so there we have a big footprint. But apart from that, we've actually found a very centralized go-to-market that lets us efficiently operate all these countries, which have been evolving over the years.
And when you expand into a new country and also like the sort of 1A, 1B question, expanding into a new country, but also expanding into new sports, like how do you, obviously you've done it a lot now, how do you and your team approach that? How do you think about it?
So from a sport perspective, it starts with the customer. It's really understanding in depth what is the customer needs. And even though it's video, right, there's difference between soccer and rugby and lacrosse and American football. It's just different sports, from a product, from a usability, the value prop we're solving. And then you kind of build your go to market around that, understanding where are your customer, how do you approach them. Obviously, there are a lot of synergies we can use, but it starts with the customer. From a sport perspective, and then from a language country perspective, we found a quite unique way where we can actually be both local and central at the same time. So if you're in France, you would experience we have French ads, French websites. You will speak to a French sales rep, to a French customer support rate. So we found a very scalable way of doing this, and I think that's the key, especially in Europe, that is to have a localized approach. Because even though everybody speaks English, then the native language is just very, very important, and it just adds a lot of complexity when you do campaigns, you do different stuff. But we find a very scalable, effective way of doing this. So it's understanding the customer, and then it's also being mindful of unit economics, so you can scale this in a healthy way.
Yeah, and have you pulled out of any sports? Have you pulled out of any countries? Like, once you're in, then how do you analyze, like, because I'm sure spend is different in every country. Like, it's not just the same. Like, setting it up, it seems like you can scale that. I'm curious then, like, once you're getting in, what data are you looking at? How are you analyzing, like, all right, let's push deeper in this market, let's pull back, hey, maybe let's get out of this one. How are you analyzing that internally? Because it's something a lot of our audience asks about, as they're going into countries. Like, how do you know it's working? Or a sport, how do you know it's working?
Yeah. So as we have this centralized approach, the funnel is super measurable. Everything from lead generation to lead conversion to the cost of the sales reps, all the way down the funnel. So that we can very easily kind of adjust the spending per region. So we're not actually pulling out of any regions. It's most which ones do we kind of give the most pedal. And obviously there are some viral effects in our product, which is interesting, right? Because when we're selling to a team, then their team is meeting 20 opponent teams throughout a season, and the customer can then share the game with the opponent, and there's a lot of interest. We can see there's some network effects, and once we do get a certain set of cameras per city or something, then we can scale from that. And then I think so that approach works well in Europe and in the US. And then there's the service angle that needs to adjust it, that are different expectations per market. I think in Japan, which we're also growing into right now, it's a whole different culture and how to do business, how to build trust around your product. Again, the service expectations. So here we are, I would say, still learning about how to do that the right way. But it's just so interesting, that market as well. So it varies a bit, but I think the fact that we don't have so much fixed cost per country enables us to be very flexible in the funnel.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And our co-founder Scott's actually in Japan right now, so we're getting a lot of insight on that market. It's definitely moves a little bit different. than others, but it's super cool. So I'm excited to hear as he gets back a lot of those insights, and we can share more too with everyone. But now, as you think about, you said you've been doing this 11 years, right? How did you think about, or how did it play out blocking, right? Was it like, hey, years 1 through 3, we're going to focus on the best hardware. Years 4, 5, 6, it became like data. Okay, now AI becomes more in the mix. The tech costs go down. The capabilities are better. That's been years, 7 through now. I'm curious, like the evolution of product and how you've built and stacked and then thought about it early, and then where obviously it ended up and is now.
Yeah, I mean, as well, in hindsight, you could kind of pull that story right and segment it. But once you're in it, once you're in the trenches, it's like you build a plan, and then whatever you know is that plan will change. Because I think what we have been obviously dared to do from the beginning is to embrace a lot of complexity, and I think that's what sets us aside from others in the space, is that we've solved the hardest problems in the beginning, which is first how to build a camera, and that is difficult. And so we obviously focus very much in the first years on building first prototypes, doing iterations of that, learning how to build hardware in a great way. And I think the learning from my side was, I thought I came from building software products before. I hadn't built hardware products when we got started. I was fortunate to meet some great people that help us build it. So we had some great people doing it. But I thought when we first had the first, whatever, 50 or 100 cameras, I thought that, okay, right, now we made it, right? We solved hardware just from here to the moon. But what I realized was that the hardest part is not building hardware prototypes, it's supply chain. So scaling supply chain is just so difficult. And that was like the next chapter of how do we then solve that? And by solving that is that when you're building 10 cameras, you can order the components, and if you build 50, you can do the same, right? But suddenly when I say, now I want to get 1,000 or 5,000, 10,000, then the vendors go, yeah, sure, but it's going to take you 12 months to supply that. And you go, shit, right? Because you don't have 12 months in a startup. So this kind of way of just, learning how to scale the supply chain and get the processes right and the repair policies and kind of all that whole journey is challenging. And then that phase went through I think was Trump's first period where he entered the trade war with Huawei, China, some of the components we had in. So then we had to do an adjustment of that back then. A few years later, we hit COVID, that then hit a supply chain semiconductor challenge. So kind of like the supply chain road has always been a challenge, but we've chosen from the start to embrace that as well. So we have all our supply chain, all our production, we do in-house. Like on the floor beneath you where I'm sitting right now, that's our production floor. So we do all assembly, all supply chain management, inventory, all that we do in-house, because that gives us just a lot of agility and a lot of quality control in our manufacturing. So you could say it's been a lot of the journey has been about maturing the development side, the supply chain side, which is now a massive advantage for us. And then with the product and the supply chain story, then obviously comes the go-to-market side, figuring out the right business models and the right product market fit. And then once all that is scaled, then it's just international scaling. How do you do this the most effective way? So it's kind of all those things intertwined, which makes the story and the learning super, super interesting here. But I think the learnings is that once you start embracing all those complexity, it can become like competitive mode, because we actually nail this, and we're still investing in new products from the camera side, really nail our supply chain. So there's a lot of competitive advantages once you nail the complexity.
How did you think about, and I don't know your cap table, but how did you think about like fundraising then as well, right? And selling the vision, and what's that journey been like for you? I'm sure it's never easy, but I'm sure it got easier over certain periods when you had real traction. But what did that look like for you guys as well? I know a lot of founders are always curious of Via's gotten big, and they've also got good partners that have helped them get there. How did you sell the vision? How did you get them on board?
I mean, the longer we started, we raised our first seed rounds in Denmark. We actually built our first prototype. Was on a foosball table where we could kind of put GoPro cameras on the sideline, and we could do some automated video production of football games. With that prototype, we raised our first rounds. And then once we started getting traction, we raised our Series A from an American and European investor. That has been super helpful in scaling the company since then. And then the later rounds have been from European Danish institutional investors. Lately, biggest pension fund in Northern Europe is an investor. But I think interestingly, how it's also been shifting. What I'm seeing is that in the beginning, hardware was not the hottest thing to invest in, right? They were more like saying, like, whatever you do, don't build your own hardware. Like, it was a really difficult thing to raise money to. I mean, I think I spoke to, I don't know, 70 investors before I found the right investor. And that has now shifted. Interestingly, that what I'm experiencing is that hardware is really, really hot right now because of everything happening in the world of agentic coding, where basically SaaS companies are challenged because you can write your own applications, right? But once you have the hardware mode, right, it's difficult for AI to produce a camera, at least at the moment, right? So it's actually a really sustainable, doable mode. The fact that we have hardware. So I think all hardware-enabled services like us, I think, is going through a really interesting period from a fundraising perspective, because it's a true mode, and everything agentic is then actually a benefit for us because we can actually accelerate product development. So I think I think that the fundraising journey is changing, and I'm actually also experiencing so much interest in sport in general. And I think, again, maybe to come back to the world is changing with AI, right? I think, I'm very sure the world is changing because of AI. But what I know is true is that in 10 years, people will still play soccer, and they will still play basketball. I think that's the only thing I know, right? So it's kind of ensuring like we're right now building products for something we know will still be there. And I think that's why sport is just a very interesting area for investors at the moment. Yeah, sport and hardware are interesting topics, and that's basically where we sit in the middle.
Yeah, and I think you could talk to this too. Probably proprietary data, right? If AI, at least on the LLM side, if that's eating up all the public data and putting it into one space, like how do you, if you have proprietary, private data, so you guys kind of have a really good sweet spot mix of sports or live experiences, right? That's how a lot of people label it. It's like anti-AI thesis. Then you have hardware, which, like you said, everyone's trying to get more involved in. It's not replicable really right now. And then,
Yeah, because I mean, AI can generate a lot of video, but AI cannot generate the video of your son scoring a goal. That's like authentic
correct,
experiences. So kind of
correct.
authentic experiences are just becoming so well. They've always been important, but from an investor
Yeah,
thesis, that's just even more experience because they cannot be regenerated. So like live concerts, like physical events, and obviously sport are just becoming a very, very important asset. And youth sport, like, it's just the biggest of them, right? Because it's where the most events are, right? It's just hundreds of
right.
millions of games being played, and basically that's what we're winning.
Yeah, I'm curious, and we can keep it like twofold on the question, but I've just been seeing like some articles recently of, high school athletes fabricating using AI their highlights, right? So like there are some downsides. I'm curious on any you think there, right? And how you guys are mitigating them. But then also, you mentioned building faster and, being able to use it around your moats of the data and hardware and sports component. Then how are you also starting to leverage it internal as well? I'm curious how you look at both sides of this next wave of, tech.
I think from the scouting angle, I saw some of the articles. It's a very it's an interesting area, and just sees how much technology can push perceptions. But on that side, I think that's again comes down to the platform to solve that. With verified services on that. We don't do scouting services at this point, but I'm sure there are out there solving that. And then else, I think what is interesting then is using LLMs to actually create more value out of all the data that we are generating, because I think our customers, right, which is the youth coach, which probably is a dad who has a full-time job, does not have so much time. Probably it's not like they don't have like the professional clubs where they have full-time analysts and all the time in the world can analyze data from morning till evening. But if you're a youth coach, probably don't have hours to spend on it. And I think what we are focusing very much on is taking the data that we are surfacing and actually creating them in a very easily digestible format. So it's the right data with the right context that is then available at the right time to the coach, so they can instantly get the insights that they need, not reading through countless of pages of stats. So I think, and here LLMs are obviously very, very good at that.
Yeah, I'm always curious, like the people dealing with it on a daily basis of like customers and then also internal, how you use it, look at it. So it's interesting. So question, Henrik, we try to keep these under 30. We're right there. But, the final question we try to ask everyone is, what else is going on in the space? It could be directly related to VO or just sports in general, that you're keeping an eye on or paying attention to that maybe you don't think enough other people are. Just sort of any high level insight you have of the space, of like things interesting to you. Again, could be completely related to VO or closely tied to it.
That's a good question. I mean, there's so many things going on the on the sports side. I think in what we are focusing very much is the how do we enhance our current experiences within capturing and within surfacing the right insights and using the trends in the market there is for that, and ultimately it's around, like, our vision is to create like the operating system for sport, because we kind of believe we believe with the video and the data and the access. And obviously we're seeing there is obviously a lot of consolidation in the market as well that we are also following. So that, I think that's super interesting. Like with all the private equity funds that is now in the space, I mean, it's just natural. Everybody have to grow, and there's some natural consolidation that we are watching. Unfortunately, we're in a very isolated space, so in that sense, we're kind of following that space, what's happening within all the team management and player registration, all that market. I think a lot of things are happening in that space. But I think what we are focusing on is like, how can we create more value out of the video that we are already filming? I think that's a ton of opportunity for us in there, and actually just continue building out the mission of making technology even more accessible, right? There are still many teams that's not using video from a recreational side, from a player side. So there's so many opportunities there to continue following.
I love it. Well, where can people, I know you guys have tailored to every country, which is cool. You always see like on your website, like in US, or I'm sure it's like in France or wherever. But, where can people learn more? Where's the best place sort of to just stay up to date on VO and all the great things you guys are working on?
On our website, vo.com, or Instagram @VOTechnologies. Those are probably the best places to follow on.
Perfect. We'll get those links in the bio. And Henrik, appreciate you coming on today. This has been awesome, and excited to see where you are over the next few. We'll get you back on, and I think there'll be a lot of interesting things that happen over the next few, just with everything we've said here today.
Coming out some mixing stuff this year. So I'll keep you posted.
I love it.
Thanks a lot for having me.